Yo, what's up? As you could probably see by the thumbnail and title, I'm going to be talking about why modern men look so weird and what the reason for that is and what you can do to prevent yourself from falling into that trap. So, firstly, I thought I'd actually start with this Instagram reel because that's sort of what sent me down this rabbit hole. I saw this like a few days ago and it was pretty cooked. So just have a watch of this. Shut up. I'm not going to put the sound on because it's like some like PSL like stupid edit song whatever. But basically, this is like a fashion show from 1995 Gucci. This is Jason Lewis, and you can see obviously like he's got like quite like a masculine face, right? Pretty self-apparent. Um, and then and then you see 30 years later in the 2025 version, which will come up I think like now. Yeah, this is like the new models, the same company, but this is what they're promoting now. Like all these guys, they look like little kids. They look super feminine. They don't look at all masculine. Like sure they have like proportional faces or whatever, but like they don't have any dimorphism. They look like women, a lot of them, compared to the first guy, right? And so basically you can see it's super apparent and you can argue that okay, this isn't an exact representation of society. But what I think is interesting is firstly, it at least partially represents society, and two, how the fashion companies are promoting this thing. Because you see, obviously, this guy, most guys didn't look like him. He was probably an outlier in more masculine, and now the second guy's are outliers in more feminine. So it's like the narrative being pushed is now pushing people towards, or pushing men towards a more feminine appearance. So I point that out. So if you haven't seen this like image before, it's pretty interesting. But basically, the hunter-gatherer skulls um, were significantly wider and like more masculine than like the modern skulls, which are a lot more narrow. And I mean, there are even like these stupid like memes about it. You can read this if you want. It's like it's kind of funny, but like I really can't be asked to like read this out loud for you. But the logic was that basically our ancestors had broader jaws, thicker hair, better posture, more muscle mass. But nowadays the common look is soft and weak, like these people in the video. And so why that is, firstly, well, biology is plastic. Like the human body will develop based on the environment. And so this can include things from nutrition, hormones, physical activity, sunlight, stress, sleep, and toxins. So if your environment is cooked, your physical traits will change as well. And so I've made specific videos for many of these topics. So I'll talk about them a little bit, but if you want in depth, you need to find the relative video or the relevant video you're interested in and watch that in its entirety. So, firstly, testosterone. The average 20-year-old man today has the same testosterone level as a 60-year-old man from the 1970s. Like, that is already a ridiculous thing. Just really deep that, and that's already a massive problem. Like, you can see this graph is literally almost halved in 60 years. Like, that's a big problem, right? Testosterone is the main male sex hormone. And if you want a quick summary, basically, firstly, it's made from cholesterol. If you can see this, cholesterol is a part of the testosterone component. It's the very first step. So obviously, you need to be eating cholesterol, and in the modern day, we're told to be scared of cholesterol. So that's a problem. Also, testosterone is largely produced and released in sleep, so you need proper sleep. Next, vitamin D has a huge impact on the cells in your balls, your Leydig cells, which produce the testosterone. So again, you need vitamin D. Zinc basically will bind to these hormones that will, or bind these chemicals that will reduce testosterone. So basically, zinc stops the reduction in testosterone. So it's important. Body fat percentage. There's this enzyme in your fat called amylase, and amylase converts testosterone into estrogen or estradiol, which is the active form of estrogen. So if you have a lower, not like really low, but if you have like a normal body fat percentage, you'll be reducing this conversion, and also cortisol, because the higher your cortisol is, the less testosterone you can produce because they work symbiotically, or the opposite. They work basically when cortisol's high, testosterone's low, and vice versa because they're made of similar things. And so this is also the sleep one, just for an example, that this study of men who had 5 hours sleep per night just for 1 week dropped their testosterone from 10 to 15%, which is the equivalent of aging about 10 years. And this is vitamin D as well. So free testosterone levels were lower and estrogen levels were higher in men with vitamin D deficiency. And vitamin D was positively associated with total and free testosterone and negatively with estrogen and luteinizing hormone. So very, very clear and obvious thing. And so what testosterone does, it can influence your muscle mass, your bone density, your jaw development, facial structure, hair growth, energy. Lower testosterone can obviously cause the reverse or like the bad versions of this. Obviously, this guy doesn't look super feminine, but the idea is the more testosterone you have, the more like masculine you look. And obviously on the left, you can see that's a much more like masculine face because of the jaw development, the facial structure, the bones are a lot denser, etc. Right? But this is multifactorial, so obviously this testosterone plays an important role in facial development, but it's not the whole picture. So next is diet. I'll keep this simple because diet, like it needs its own like video. I think diet is one of the most, if not the most important thing for your health. And so I've made plenty of videos on diet, so watch them if you want. But obviously, the more nutrients you receive, the better you develop. Like if you feed one person complete like shitty slave food like this, and you feed another person like the optimal human diet, of course the one with the proper diet is going to develop better. Not saying genetics don't exist, but you need, in order to reach your potential, like your optimal potential of genetics, you need to nourish yourself properly, right? That should make complete sense. And so apart from having no or minimal nutrients, modern slop is also full of toxins and chemicals, which not only do nothing, but actually have negative effects on your development and health. So, yeah. Next is physical activity. If you think about humans, we actually evolved for long-term, low-intensity movements. So stuff like that is endurance hunting, where humans would often be walking slash jogging after animals for a very long time, 2 to 7 hours, and eventually the animal would overheat and collapse. That was a very common form of hunting. And if you look at a lot of tribal documentaries on like National Geographic, whatever, like the people are walking around for upwards of 6 to 10 hours, if not more, per day. And modern life, we're in the exact reverse. We have extended periods of sitting down under LED lights doing nothing, broken up by super high stress periods of like workouts, which is completely unnatural because we're not designed to do nothing and then everything. We're designed to do consistent something, if that makes sense. Next is sunlight. So sunlight obviously influences vitamin D, also influences circadian rhythm, made a video on that. Hormone production, I've mentioned that with testosterone. Skin health, I made a video on that. I've made a whole video on sunlight, so if you're interested, click that, but you can read the rest of these. But for example, hair growth, anagen phase, which is your growth phase of hair. When there's a deficiency of vitamin D, the anagen phase shortens and pushes premature hair follicles into the telogen phase, the resting phase when growth doesn't exist, leading to excessive shedding and thinner hair. Right? So again, watch the sunlight video if you want more information, but also super important. Next, modern environmental toxins. I'll make a video on this in the future, but this is stuff like endocrine disrupting chemicals, plastics, industrial pollutants, and some things, for example, microplastics. I just decided to focus on that for this because it's not like its own full thing, so I don't want to be talking for too long. But this study here, potential health implications of microplastics. In the conclusion sections, it says that the toxicity research on microplastics showed that the exposure will cause intestinal injury, liver infection, flora imbalance, that's like your gut microbiome, lipid accumulations, like fat accumulation, and then lead to metabolic disorder. In addition, the microplastic exposure increases the expression of inflammatory factors, inhibits activity at acetylcholinesterase, sat pronouncing these words, bro, reduces the quality of germ cells, and affects embryo development. So like even like a baby, like it will literally affect the development of the baby, like still in the mother. Like that's how bad it is. And it says, at last we speculate the exposure of microplastics may be related to the formation of various chronic diseases. And they also noted here that at present it's difficult to analyze microplastics with smaller size, so nanoplastics. So all they can really do is like the bigger chunks. So the nanoplastics might be even doing a whole heap of worse things. And also microplastics are not only toxic in themselves, but also carry many pollutants. Like they'll bind to pollutants and then carry those pollutants into your tissues and organs. So basically it's super, super bad for you, right? And so by reducing your plastic exposure through not heating up food in plastic, no, but I'm sure you've heard the spiel about microplastics before. You can have a make a big impact on your health. Stress. So chronic stress will increase your cortisol and your sympathetic nervous activity, which is like your fight or flight response. But in contrast, the low cortisol reduces that fight or flight. It increases like the resting state, the parasympathetic state. And so long-term stress can affect your metabolism, your body composition, your hormone balance. Like for example, this study, this was on hair growth because I feel like a lot of these are sort of obvious, but hair growth was sort of interesting. They removed the adrenal glands in mice, so they removed like the glands that create adrenaline, and that led to rapid cycles of head regrowth. So basically, the whole problem when they removed the gland that produced these stress hormones, suddenly their hair just shot up, right? And then the team when they fed the mice corticosteroids, so effectively cortisol, like a stress hormone, the mice went back to the normal hair cycle. So another huge thing, like modern life is full of chronic stress, whereas evolutionarily we didn't evolve for like all of this stress with exams and deadlines, jobs, money, bills, all of this shit. Like it just constantly stresses us out and ages us, which is not conducive to how we're meant to evolve. Another thing is sleep disruption. So sleep literally affects everything. So it's like obviously sleep is when your body grows and develops. And so deficiency in sleep leads to a deficiency in growth and development. There's going to be like height, like facial structure, shoulder width, testosterone production, recovery, muscle growth, fat storage, like literally everything. Again, one more detail, watch the video on sleep. But in short, sleep affects literally everything. Even, I didn't list it here, but even like skin health, appearance, it's all sleep. Super, super important. So get your sleep in every single night, non-negotiable. Next is like the cultural factors. Like I think this is pretty important because like nowadays we have like social isolation, chronic indoor time, reduced competition, and yeah, it feels like everyone's just not really in it for actual living anymore. They're just too busy on their like jobs and money to actually enjoy life. And so you can see, for example, this the effects of perceived isolation in humans basically trigger the sympathetic nervous system. So again, it releases cortisol and stress, which you know, reduces sleep quality. That's what salubrity means. Higher rates, and basically, yeah, in total, higher rates of isolation contributes to higher rates of morbidity and mortality in older adults. Super, super bad. So, just to sum up, if you just go back to being human again, try to reduce your stress as much as possible, eat a normal diet or a natural diet, get more sunlight, uh, I guess, etc. Physical activity, whatever. Your body will thank you and you'll live how you're supposed to live. So, yeah, thanks for watching. If you're still there, I appreciate it. And I'll catch you in the next one.